What we'll be doing for today's lesson is rounding numbers to significant figures. The key words for today's lesson are decimals, significant figures and rounding. Equipment required this lesson. You need a pen, paper and a pencil. How to round to any number of significant figures. So you count significant figures from the left, starting from the first non-zero digit. Is it 5 or more? Use the rules of rounding. So what we've been doing in the previous lesson, if it's 5 or more, you round up. If it's less than 5, the number stays the same. But when you round into significant figures, it's slightly different, which I'll show you on the next slide. And what you also need to check is, does your answer make sense? If it doesn't, you probably are wrong. Okay, so first set of questions, we need to round to one significant figure. Okay, so it said we need to start from the left. So we're starting from the left and it needs to be a non-zero digit. So my first significant figure in this number is the 7. So I need to draw a line between the 7 and the 6. Okay, so now I'm looking at my 6. Is my 6 5 or more? Yes. So I need to round up now. Okay, so now my answer is going to be 0.08 and everything else turns into a 0. Okay, you don't need to write that down. Okay, but everything else turns into a 0. So my answer is 0.08. Next one now. Okay, we start from the left. Okay, so now I draw my line between the 2 and the 4. Okay, because 2 is my first significant figure. Okay, now is the 4 5 or more? No. So my number stays the same. So now the 2 stays the same, but every other digit turns into a 0. So now my answer is 200. What I'd like you to do now is pause the video and have a go at answering the two questions. Okay, so for this one, okay, my first significant figure is this 1. Okay, so I'll draw my line between the 1 and the 2. Okay, so now is 2 5 or more? No. So my number will stay the same and any number after it will turn into a 0. So my answer is 0.001. Okay, next question now. And remember guys, you need to start from the left. Okay, so my first significant figure on this one is 5. So now I draw my line between the 5 and the 8. So now is 8 5 or more? Yes. Okay, so now I need to round up. My 5 rounds up to 6 and everything else turns into a 0. So my answer is 600. Okay, next set of questions now. Rounding to two significant figures. Exactly the same method, but now we're counting two significant figures instead of one. So now we start from the left and now my second significant figure is the 4. Okay, so I'll draw a line between 4 and 7. So now we're looking at the 7. Is 7 5 or more? Yes. Okay, so now my 4 rounds up to 5 and everything else turns into a 0. So now my answer is 1500. Okay, next one. So now we're involving decimals. Okay, so 1 is a significant figure, but it's my first significant figure. 4 is my second significant figure, so my line goes between 4 and 2. So now we're looking at that 2. Is 2 5 or more? No. So my answer is going to be 1.4, and you can write 3 zeros after it, but you don't need to because it's the same number. Okay, what I'd like you to do now is pause the video and have a go at answering the next two questions. Okay, so for this first question, I will draw my line between the 2 and the 7. Okay, because 2 is my second significant figure. Okay, so now we're looking at the 7. Is 7 5 or more? Yes. So now my 2 rounds up to 3. So and everything else after it turns into a 0. So my answer is 43,000. Okay, next one now. Now this is slightly trickier because we've got a 0 now. If a 0 is between two numbers, it's counted as a significant figure. If it's at the start of a number, so for example, if we had 0.2, you don't count the 0. If it's between two numbers, you count the 0 as a significant figure. Okay, so for example, on this one, we've got 204,478. So we start from the left and we count the first two significant figures. So my line will go between the 0 and the 4. Okay, because this 0 is between two numbers. It's not the start of a number. Okay, so now we're looking at the 4. Is the 4 5 or more? No. So now 0 stays the same and everything else after it also becomes a 0. So my answer is 200,000. Okay, next ones. Now we're rounding to three significant figures. Okay, like I said in the previous question, if 0 is at the start, you don't count it. Only if it's between two numbers, you count it as a significant figure. So now my third significant figure here is 7. So now I draw a line between 7 and 1. Is my 1 5 or more? No. So my answer stays the same, and anything after the 7 becomes a 0. So my answer is 0.0267. Okay, next one now. I count three significant figures from the left. 1, 2, 3. I'll draw my line between the 4 and the 9. Okay, is 9 5 or more? Yes, it is. So my 4 rounds up to 5 and everything else becomes a 0. So my new answer is 975,000. Okay, what I'd like you to do now is pause the video and have a go at answering the next two questions. Okay, so first one, my line goes between the 7 and the 9. Okay, is 9 5 or more? Yes. So I need to round the 7 up to 8. So my answer is 13,800 because everything after the 7 becomes a 0. Okay, next one, I draw my line between the 7 and the 2. Is my 2 5 or more? No, it isn't. Okay, so my 7 stays the same and everything else after it becomes a 0. So my answer is 34,700. Okay, what I'd like you to do now for homework, if you are in set 3, please have a go at the red section. If you're in set 2, please have a go at the red and amber section. If you are in set 1, please have a go at the green section. Once you're done, please take a picture and upload to class charts.